Good morning, my friends. Today, I want to share a story with you, so sit back and enjoy. It was a typical morning when Marilyn Curtis arrived, and I could feel the office's atmosphere shift, like a slow, creeping chill settling in. There was something about her, an aura of control, sharp and uncompromising. I was at my desk, buried in routine paperwork, pretending the brewing storm at the entrance had nothing to do with me. She entered with a confidence that made everyone pause, even if just for a moment. Her tailored suit, impeccable posture, and piercing eyes seemed to measure the worth of each person in the room. When her gaze landed on me, I kept my head down, pretending to focus on a file in front of me. I knew better than to draw attention, at least for now. "Julian," her voice cut through the quiet hum of the office, sharp and precise. I looked up to see her standing by my desk, clutching a stack of papers, a condescending smirk playing on her lips. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "Good. I need you to handle these," she said, dropping the files onto my desk. Her eyes flicked over my worn tie and creased shirt with thinly veiled disdain. "Simple tasks, perfect for someone with your background." I took the papers, feeling the weight of her words far more than the weight of the files. She didn't really know who I was, just another employee to boss around. What she didn't realize was that I owned this place. Well, 91% of it. But that detail I kept to myself, allowing others to assume whatever they wanted. "Of course," I said, voice steady, as I placed the files in the corner of my desk. She didn't wait for a reply, turning on her heel and walking away. Her designer heels clicked against the floor with each step. I watched her retreat to her office, already decorated with diplomas and achievements, as if she had conquered the company before even getting her hands dirty. The office buzzed with nervous energy as she passed by. Sarah, the receptionist, leaned over her desk as I headed to the break room. "She's something, huh?" Sarah whispered, eyes wide. "Yeah," I muttered, grabbing a cup of coffee, more out of habit than need. "She's going to make things interesting." Sarah nodded, relieved that someone else had noticed. I heard she already got James from accounting in tears. I chuckled softly, but the humor didn't reach my eyes. Marilyn Curtis was a force of nature, but I wasn't worried. People like her always burn bright, and burn out just as fast. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't just an employee here. I was the storm she'd never see coming. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Marilyn stormed into the office again, heels pounding like gunfire on the polished floor. I had just settled into my chair, reviewing client reports, when the door to my cubicle burst open. "Julian!" Her voice was sharp, slicing through the quiet hum. She slammed a document onto my desk, eyes blazing with accusation. "Care to explain this?" I blinked, confused, looking down at the paper. An email addressed to one of our biggest clients, filled with complaints about poor service, damaged goods, and a clear threat to terminate their contract. "I don't understand," I said, furrowing my brow as I picked up the paper. "I didn't send this." Her arms crossed, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Of course you didn't," she said sarcastically. "Because someone like you couldn't handle something so important. But this email comes from your workstation." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just an accusation, it was an outright sabotage attempt. I knew I hadn't written that email, never would. But here it was, in black and white, linked to my name. "I would never send something like that," I said, voice steady despite my pounding heart. "There must be a mistake." Marilyn's laugh was cold, almost mocking. "You made one too many mistakes, Julian. First your work ethic, now this. Honestly, it's embarrassing." Before I could respond, Sarah appeared at the doorway looking nervous. "Is everything okay?" she asked cautiously. "No," Marilyn snapped, waving the paper. "Julian here thinks he's above responsibility." I looked at Sarah, grateful for her presence. "I didn't send this email," I said firmly. "Someone must have used my account." Marilyn scoffed, stepping closer. "Blaming others now. Predictable." I stared at her, realizing this wasn't just about the email. It was about power, her attempt to humiliate me and make an example. But she didn't know who she was messing with. "Not yet. I'll get to the bottom of this," I said, voice calm but firm. "And Marilyn, the truth will come out." She narrowed her eyes but said nothing, turning on her heel and storming out. As the door swung shut, I let out a slow breath. This wasn't over, far from it. Later, I entered the conference room for the upcoming shareholder meeting. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Marilyn was already there, near the window, chatting with some executives. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, her eyes narrowed into that familiar smirk. I took a seat at the back, keeping a low profile, better to observe than to be observed for now. As the meeting began, Marilyn's gaze kept flickering to me, her expression a mix of disbelief and disdain. Suddenly, she approached, heels echoing loudly in the silent room. "What do you think you're doing here, Julian?" she hissed softly. "This is for senior management and shareholders, not lowly employees." I looked up, keeping my tone steady. "I was invited." She scoffed and leaned closer. "You don't belong here. Leave before you embarrass yourself." The room's tension was palpable. Just as I was about to respond, the door opened, and the president of the company entered, followed by the board members. He took his seat at the head of the table, scanning the room until his gaze settled on Marilyn, who quickly composed herself. The meeting started with reports on profits, projections, and routine corporate updates. But I knew what was coming. As the discussion turned toward shareholders, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. The president cleared his throat and addressed the room. "Before we proceed, I need to clarify something important. There's been some confusion regarding the ownership structure of this company." Marilyn shifted uncomfortably, shooting me a side glance. The president continued, "A controlling shareholder in our company, holding 91% of the shares, is Julian Ball." A gasp rippled through the room. Marilyn's face paled as she turned sharply toward me, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to speak. I remained seated, calm and unshaken. The president gestured toward me. "Julian isn't just an employee. He holds the true authority here. I've known this for years." Marilyn staggered back, visibly shaken. "This can't be true," she stammered. "He's just a low-level employee." I finally stood, my voice firm. "I've been watching, waiting, and now the truth is out. Marilyn, you treated me and others poorly because you didn't know who I really was. Now, you'll have to face the consequences." The room fell silent, the storm I had been quietly building finally breaking free. And this was just the beginning. I said, blocking her gaze. Marilyn's fall from grace had begun. It was the morning after the revelation, quiet but heavy with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. The shareholder meeting had shaken the office to its core. Whispers trailed me through the halls, people who had known me for years suddenly avoiding my eyes, their glances filled with confusion and awe. The weight of my secret was gone, but its exposure had brought a new tension to the surface. At noon, the president called for an emergency meeting in his office. Marilyn and I were both summoned, and I knew exactly why. As I approached the door, I saw Marilyn ahead of me. Her usually confident steps were now slower, more hesitant. She didn't greet me as we reached the door, something I'd never seen before. When we arrived at the same time, for the first time since I'd known her, Marilyn Curtis appeared unsure of herself. We entered the president's office. He sat behind a large mahogany desk, his hands folded, his face grim. His silence was heavy, as if he was wrestling with the gravity of what had just transpired. "Sit down," he ordered, his voice measured. We both obeyed. Marilyn shifted into her seat, still outwardly composed but looking at me with a hint of uncertainty. I took a moment to glance at her. Her polished exterior seemed on the verge of cracking. "You both made this company your life," the president began, his eyes flickering between us. "But what happened yesterday has changed everything." Marilyn's composure faltered further. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but tinged with desperation. "Mr. Williams, I didn't know who Julian was." The president cut her off sharply, raising his hand. "I've heard enough, Marilyn. The damage you've caused over the last few months can't be undone with words." Her eyes widened, lips trembling. "I didn't mean for this. If I had known." "That's the problem," I interjected calmly. "It shouldn't matter who I am. You've treated everyone beneath you with disdain." The president nodded in agreement. "Julian's right. The fact that you didn't know his position is irrelevant. Your behavior has undermined the values this company stands for, respect and collaboration. You've crossed too many lines, Marilyn." Her hands clenched, voice growing more frantic. Please, I can change. I was under pressure to perform. The president's tone was stern. It's not just about your attitude, Marilyn. There are serious accusations against you: client mishandling, employee harassment. This isn't just about mistakes, it's about accountability. She turned to me, eyes pleading. Julian, you understand, don't you? We've all made mistakes. With your influence, maybe we can work something out. I met her gaze, recalling months of belittlement and manipulation. This wasn't about mistakes. It was about consequences. This isn't just about mistakes, I said softly. It's about responsibility. Her face fell, and she slumped back into her chair, defeated. The president sighed heavily, then turned to her. Marilyn Curtis, your actions have left me no choice. Effective immediately, you are dismissed from your position. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Her face drained of color. She didn't say a word. The meeting was over, and so was her reign of terror. The tension eased, but the silence that followed was unsettling. Marilyn sat frozen, staring blankly ahead, as if the words hadn't registered. I watched her, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. She had dug her own grave, and her fall was brutal but deserved. The president signaled the end of the meeting. You have until the end of the day to gather your things. Security will escort you out, he said. Marilyn finally blinked, her trembling hands clutching the armrests. This can't be happening, she muttered, barely a whisper. More to herself than anyone else. Then, turning to me with desperation in her eyes, she begged, Julian, please. You know I didn't mean for things to go this far. I was trying to prove myself. You can understand that, can't you? For a moment, I considered her plea. Months ago, I might have believed her, sympathized with her struggles. But now, the damage was too deep. I understand pressure, I replied evenly. But I don't understand cruelty. Her face fell, devoid of her usual sharpness, and for the first time, she had no defense. Just silence. The president cleared his throat, standing up from behind his desk. That's enough, he said firmly, glancing between us. Marilyn, you've made your choices. Now, you must face the consequences. There's nothing more to say. She looked like she might protest, but the president's expression left no room for argument. With trembling hands, she nodded and whispered, Fine, before turning to leave. As she hesitated at the door, she cast one last glance over her shoulder, her arrogance gone, replaced by something more fragile, more broken. I said nothing, only watching as she walked away. The weight of her defeat hung heavily in the room. The president sighed again, rubbing his temples. I never thought it would come to this, he admitted quietly. But it had to be done. I nodded in agreement. It was long overdue. He looked at me with a tired smile. You handled the situation with more grace than most would have. I'm proud of you. I didn't respond immediately, still processing everything. Thank you, I finally said. But now it's time to move forward for everyone. The president's face softened. Indeed, and with you in your position, I'm confident the company will thrive. As I left his office, a strange sense of closure washed over me. Marilyn was gone, and with her departure, the dark cloud that had hung over the office for so long was finally lifting. Her fall had been inevitable, and now the company could breathe again.